I've been driving trucks for almost 15 years, and if there's one thing you learn out on the road, it's that loneliness changes people. Weeks away from home, endless highways, sleeping in rest stops, driving through storms that make you feel like the last person alive on Earth. Eventually, your mind starts playing tricks on you. At least, that's what I used to believe. This happened in the winter of 2008 while I was hauling frozen meat across Wyoming on Interstate 80. Anyone who's driven through that state at night knows how empty it feels. Miles and miles of nothing but snow, mountains, and darkness. No houses, no lights, just road. I remember checking the weather before leaving Rawlins. The woman at the truck stop told me not to drive that night because a storm was coming in fast. But my delivery was already late, and my dispatcher kept pressuring me to keep moving. Big mistake. Around midnight, the snow started falling hard enough that I could barely see past my headlights. The wind slammed against my trailer so violently I had both hands locked on the wheel trying to keep the truck straight. The CB radio was mostly dead, except for occasional static and random truckers complaining about the storm. That's when I heard the voice. "Driver, you got your eyes open?" The voice crackled through the radio so suddenly it made me jump. I grabbed the mic. "Yeah, barely. Roads are getting bad." A few seconds passed before the voice answered again. "You running eastbound?" "Yeah." Long silence. Then, "Be careful around mile marker 287. I asked why, but only static came back. At first I figured it was just some bored trucker messing around. Happens all the time out there. But about 20 minutes later, I noticed something strange. There were no other vehicles. None. Not a single pair of headlights in either direction. That's unusual even during storms because truckers are always moving through I-80, but suddenly it felt like I was completely alone. Then my CB radio burst with static again, and through the noise, I heard breathing, not talking. Breathing, slow, wet. Like someone standing too close to the microphone. I turned the volume down immediately. That uneasy feeling started crawling up my neck. You know the one. The kind that makes your instincts start screaming before your brain understands why. I looked at the clock on the dashboard. 2:13 a.m. I still remember that exact time because right after I looked up, I saw her. At first, I thought it was a reflector post near the shoulder, just a pale shape in the snow. Then, my headlights hit it fully. A woman, standing on the side of the interstate, barefoot. She was wearing something white that looked almost like a nightgown, moving in the wind. Her skin looked unnaturally pale against the darkness, and she wasn't waving for help. She was just standing there, looking directly at my truck. Now listen, I know how crazy this sounds, but I swear to God, this happened. As I got closer, I realized something else. She wasn't reacting to the storm. The snow was blasting sideways across the highway hard enough to shake my trailer, but her hair and clothes barely moved, like the wind wasn't touching her. Every instinct told me not to stop. I kept driving, but as I passed her, I glanced in my passenger mirror for maybe half a second. She was gone, completely gone. No footprints, no figure walking away, nothing, just snow. I felt this horrible tightness in my chest. I grabbed the CB mic with shaking hands and said, "Anyone else just see a woman near 287? No answer, only static. Then suddenly another voice came through, quiet, almost whispering, "She got in your truck yet?" I froze. Who the hell is this? No response. Then the radio died completely, not static. Dead silence. That's when I heard the knock. 3 slow knocks. From behind me, inside the trailer. I nearly drove off the road. Now trailers make noises all the time. Cargo shifts, metal contracts in the cold, but this was different. It sounded deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. I tried telling myself it was nothing, but then it happened again, closer this time. Like something was moving forward inside the trailer. I looked in my side mirror toward the back doors, expecting maybe to see one hanging loose. Instead, I saw something pale pressed against the inside of the trailer window on the passenger side sleeper compartment. A face, a woman's face, smiling. I slammed on the brakes so hard the truck fishtailed across the highway before stopping sideways in the snow. The face disappeared instantly. My entire body was shaking at that point. I grabbed my flashlight and actually considered getting out to check the truck, but the second I opened the cab door, freezing wind exploded inside and I heard something that still gives me nightmares. Footsteps, crunching slowly through the snow toward the truck. Not running, walking. I pointed the flashlight into the storm but could barely see 10 feet ahead. Then, the beam landed on her, standing directly in front of my truck now, closer than before. I could finally see her face clearly. Her eyes looked wrong, too dark, like empty holes, and her mouth. She was smiling so wide it didn't look human anymore. I slammed the door shut and locked it immediately, even though I knew how stupid that was. If someone wants into a truck, a lock won't stop them. Then she lifted one hand slowly and pointed behind me. I turned around instinctively toward the sleeper berth. Something was standing back there in the darkness, tall, bent forward unnaturally. I couldn't see its face, but I heard breathing, right inside the cab with me. I spun back around screaming, and the woman outside was suddenly inches from the windshield, her face pressed against the glass, still smiling. Then every light inside my truck died at once. Dashboard, radio, headlights, everything. Complete darkness, but I could still hear breathing beside me. I don't mind admitting this part because it's the truth. I started praying, out loud, over and over. I don't even remember what I was saying. Then suddenly the truck's power came back. The headlights flickered on. The woman was gone. The breathing stopped. Everything was silent except for the storm. I started the truck immediately and drove the rest of the night without stopping once. When I finally reached the next truck stop near Cheyenne, I looked so bad. One of the workers asked if I needed an ambulance. I told an older trucker there what happened. The entire time I spoke, he just stared at me quietly. Then he asked one question. "What time did you see her?" I told him. 2:13 a.m. The color drained from his face immediately. He told me there'd been stories on that highway for years about a woman who appears during snowstorms. According to local truckers, decades earlier, a driver stopped for a woman matching that exact description. Neither of them were ever seen again. Since then, drivers have reported hearing strange voices on the CB around mile marker 287 right before seeing her. Most people laugh it off, but not the older truckers. The ones who've driven Wyoming long enough know better. And here's the part I've never been able to explain. When I got home days later, I was cleaning trash out of my cab when I noticed wet footprints on the floor behind the seats. Bare footprints, small ones, frozen into the mud and salt, leading from the sleeper berth to the passenger seat beside me. I've told this story exactly one time in my life, and even then the guy I told it to thought I was lying. Honestly, I wish I was. Back in 2011, I was running overnight loads through Texas, mostly long empty stretches between small towns where the roads go on forever and the radio stations barely work. Truckers usually rely on CB radios out there because cell service cuts in and out constantly. It was around 1:30 in the morning when this happened. I had just crossed through a tiny town I can't even remember anymore. Population probably less than 1,000. One gas station, one motel, nothing else. The road ahead was completely empty. No headlights, no taillights, just darkness. I remember feeling unusually tired that night, the kind of exhaustion where your eyes keep losing focus for half a second. So I rolled my window down to let cold air hit my face and turned up the CB radio to stay awake. That's when I heard him. Breaker 19. Anybody got eyes on that red Freightliner? The voice sounded distorted under heavy static. Old. Weak. I grabbed the mic. Go ahead. A few seconds passed before he answered. He's still behind me. At first, I thought he was talking to another driver. I asked, "Who's behind you?" Then the man said something that made my stomach tighten immediately. The dead man. Silence. I laughed nervously because I assumed it was some truckers messing around. Haven't had enough coffee tonight, huh? But the guy ignored the joke completely. His breathing was shaky now. You don't understand. He's been behind me for 2 hours. Something about the fear in his voice sounded real. Too real. I asked where he was. Mile marker 41. I checked my GPS. That was less than 10 miles ahead of me. The radio crackled again. Then another driver suddenly cut in. Hey, old man, shut that crap up. The first voice answered immediately. You see him too, don't you? No response. Only static. Then the second trucker came back, sounding angry now. Don't talk about him on the damn radio. The second he said that, my entire body got cold. You have to understand something about truckers. Guys joke constantly on the CB, but fear sounds different when it's genuine, and these men sounded terrified. I kept driving. 5 minutes later, I saw headlights appear in my mirror. A truck, far behind me. At first, nothing seemed strange except for one detail. Its headlights never moved. No bouncing, no drifting, no lane corrections. It stayed perfectly centered behind me, like it was frozen in place. I sped up slightly, so did it. I slowed down. It slowed too. That uneasy feeling started building in my chest again. I picked up the CB mic. Driver behind me, you copy? No answer, just static. Then through the static came that same old man's voice again, quiet now, almost crying. He finally found somebody else. The headlights behind me suddenly got closer, fast, way too fast. I looked in the mirror again, expecting to see the truck flying up behind me, but instead, I saw something impossible. The cab looked wrong, old, like a semi-truck from the 1970s, rust covering the grille, one broken headlight, and the windshield. Jesus Christ, there was someone sitting in the passenger seat staring directly at me. Not moving, just staring. I couldn't make out details because of the snow and darkness, but the face looked pale, too pale. Then the truck's headlights flickered once, and suddenly it was much closer than before. Maybe 20 feet behind my trailer now. I slammed the accelerator down. My truck roared forward, but the old Freightliner stayed right behind me effortlessly. That's when my CB radio exploded with noise so loud I nearly dropped the mic. Voices, multiple voices, talking over each other through static, panicked screaming. Then one sentence came through clearly. Don't let him pass you. I swear on my life that's exactly what I heard. At that point, I was doing nearly 80 down an empty Texas highway, trying not to lose control of the trailer. The truck behind me kept getting closer. Then my lights flickered, just once. But in that split second of darkness, I saw something standing in the middle of the road, ahead. A man, wearing what looked like old trucker overalls, completely motionless. I yanked the wheel hard and barely missed him. When I looked back in the mirror, the truck behind me was gone. Just gone. No headlights. No tail lights. Nothing. The highway behind me was completely empty again. I pulled into the first truck stop I could find about 20 miles later. I was shaking so badly I could barely climb out of the cab. Inside, there were 3 older truckers drinking coffee. One of them looked at me and asked, "You see the old red Freightliner?" I never answered him. Didn't need to. He nodded slowly like he already knew. Then he told me a story I wish I'd never heard. Back in the late 1970s, a truck driver hauling fuel supposedly crashed somewhere along that highway after being awake for almost 30 hours straight. According to rumors, another trucker stopped to help him. Neither man was found alive. Ever since then, drivers have reported hearing strange transmissions on Channel 19 late at night, warning about a red Freightliner following them. Most people dismiss it as road stories, but the older truckers don't laugh, especially the ones who drive through Texas after midnight. And here's the worst part. 2 weeks after it happened, I was cleaning out my cab when I found something wedged underneath the passenger seat, a rusted metal keychain, old enough to look ancient. Stamped into the metal were the words, Freightliner 1977. I I drove refrigerated loads for almost 8 years, and during that time I learned one important rule every trucker eventually hears. If you stop at night and hear knocking underneath your trailer, don't look. Most people think truckers tell stories to entertain themselves. Some do. But certain warnings get repeated too often by too many different drivers to ignore, especially in places like New Mexico and West Texas, where the highways stretch through miles of empty desert with almost no lights for hours. This happened to me in October of 2014. I was hauling frozen food westbound through New Mexico after midnight. I'd been driving for nearly 10 hours already, exhausted and irritated because my refrigeration unit kept acting up. Every 30 minutes, the alarm inside the cab would beep for no reason. By around 2 a.m., I was somewhere near a dead stretch of highway outside Tucumcari. No towns nearby, no gas stations. Nothing but desert and road. That's when my reefer unit alarm started screaming again. I pulled onto the shoulder to check it. The moment I stepped outside, I noticed how quiet everything was. No wind, no insects, nothing. Just silence. My headlights illuminated the side of the trailer while the engine idled behind me. I walked toward the refrigeration unit at the front of the trailer and checked the gauges. Everything looked normal. Then I heard it. Knock. A single knock from underneath the trailer. I froze immediately. At first I thought maybe cargo had shifted. Then it happened again. Knock, knock, slow, metallic, like someone tapping directly against the underside of the trailer floor. Every hair on my body stood up. I grabbed my flashlight and slowly pointed it beneath the trailer. Nothing there, just darkness and the trailer axles. I remember laughing nervously at myself because I was already exhausted and paranoid from being alone too long. Then a voice whispered from under the trailer, "Don't leave me here." I dropped the flashlight. I swear to God I heard it clearly, a woman's voice, weak, crying, coming from directly underneath my trailer. My first thought was that someone had crawled under there for help somehow, maybe an injured person, maybe a migrant. Out in those highways, strange things happen sometimes. I got down on one knee and aimed the flashlight under the trailer again. Still nothing. But then I noticed something that made my stomach turn. There were hands gripping the frame underneath. Human hands, pale fingers wrapped tightly around the metal. I stumbled backward instantly. The hands slowly pulled back into darkness. At that point, I should have driven away. Instead, like an idiot, I called out, "Hey, you okay under there?" No response. Then came the knocking again, but now it was moving. Knock, 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 traveling slowly from the back of the trailer toward me underneath the truck. Like something crawling, I backed toward the cab as fast as I could without taking my eyes off the trailer. Then the whisper came again, closer now. "Please." The voice sounded directly beneath me. I jumped into the truck, locked the doors immediately, and started pulling back onto the highway. That's when the banging started. Violent pounding exploded underneath the trailer hard enough to shake the entire truck. Boom, boom, boom. It sounded like multiple fists slamming against metal from inside the trailer floor. I grabbed the CB mic trying to call anyone nearby, but only static came back. Then my passenger side mirror moved slightly, like someone had touched it from outside. I looked over. There was a woman standing on the side step beside my passenger door, smiling at me. I almost crashed right there. Her skin looked gray under the moonlight. Her eyes looked completely black. One of her hands was pressed flat against the window, while the other pointed toward the sleeper berth behind me. And that's when I heard breathing. Inside the cab. Slow. Wet. Right behind my seat. I spun around expecting to see another person back there. Nothing. But the smell hit me instantly. Rotting meat. So strong it made my eyes water. The pounding under the trailer became deafening now, like dozens of people hammering upward from beneath the floor. Then all at once, silence. Complete silence. The woman outside the window was gone. The breathing stopped. Even the reefer unit noise disappeared for a second. I drove nearly 90 miles without stopping. When I finally reached a truck stop near Albuquerque, I parked under the brightest lights I could find and inspected the entire truck. Nothing underneath. No damage, no footprints, nothing. But when I opened the trailer doors to inspect the cargo, something fell onto the floor near my boots. A dirty silver bracelet. Old, bent out of shape. Attached to it was a tiny plate with part of a woman's name engraved into the metal. Mar. I reported everything to another driver inside the truck stop diner. The guy looked older, probably in his 60s. He listened quietly without interrupting once. Then he asked me where exactly I stopped. I told him the highway marker. The old driver went pale immediately. He said years earlier, police found evidence of several bodies dumped in that area off the highway, mostly hitchhikers and missing women. Some truckers believe their spirits still try to flag drivers down at night. Others believe something else lives out there pretending to be them. I haven't driven through that part of New Mexico since, but every now and then, usually around 2 a.m., my CB radio still bursts into static for no reason, and once, just once, I heard knocking from underneath the trailer. They almost didn't take that road, and later that would be the only thing both of them agreed on, because everything that happened after felt like it started with that one small decision, turning off the main highway somewhere outside Little Rock and following a poorly lit county road that cut through miles of forest with no traffic and no signal. Jason had seen it on the map before the GPS went blank, a shortcut that looked harmless, maybe even faster, but after 20 minutes of driving, neither of them felt that anymore because the road had changed in a way that was hard to explain. The trees were too close, the darkness too thick, and the air itself felt still, like nothing moved out there unless it wanted to. Claire noticed it first when she looked at the time on the dashboard and realized it hadn't changed in a while. Not frozen exactly, but repeating, like it would go forward a minute and then slip back again. And when she mentioned it, Jason laughed it off, blaming the car, blaming the signal, anything but what it actually felt like. Then they saw the house. It appeared suddenly on the side of the road, barely visible between the trees. A small wooden structure with a single light on inside, glowing faintly through a dirty window. Jason slowed down without thinking. Claire immediately felt it. "Don't stop," she said. "I'm not stopping," he answered, but he didn't speed up either. The house didn't look abandoned, but it didn't look right either. The front door was open, just slightly, enough to notice. As they passed, Claire turned her head just a little, trying not to look too long, and that's when she saw something move inside. Not clearly, just a shift, like someone stepping back into the darkness. Jason, he kept his eyes forward. "What? There's someone in there." He didn't respond. He just pressed the gas a little more, putting distance between them and the house. Neither of them spoke for a minute. Then Jason checked the mirror. The house was still visible. Too visible. They had been driving for longer than that. It should have disappeared by now, but it didn't. It stayed there, far behind them, but not getting smaller. Claire felt her chest tighten. That's not right. Jason didn't answer. He kept driving, faster now, but the house stayed in the mirror. Same size, same light, same open door. Then something changed. Claire leaned forward slightly, her eyes locked on the reflection. "Jason? What?" The door. He didn't want to look, but he did. In the mirror, the door was opening wider, slowly, from where they were. Miles away. They both saw it. The light inside flickered once, then steadied, and something stepped into the doorway, too tall to be a person, too thin. Its head nearly touched the top of the frame. Jason's hands tightened on the wheel. "That's just distance messing with us," he said, but his voice didn't sound convincing. Claire didn't respond. She was still staring. "It's not staying in the doorway." Jason felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean?" "It's stepping outside." He looked again, and for a second, everything inside him went cold, because the thing wasn't just standing there anymore. It was on the road, behind them. Jason slammed the gas. The car surged forward, engine roaring against the silence of the forest. But when he checked the mirror again, the house was gone, completely gone. No light, no door, nothing, just empty darkness. Claire exhaled shakily. "Okay, it's gone." Jason nodded, but he didn't slow down. He didn't trust it. Not anymore. Minutes passed. Then the road curved slightly, and something appeared ahead. Jason's heart dropped instantly. The same house, right in front of them, on the side of the road, exactly the same. Same light, same open door. Claire whispered, No, Jason didn't slow down this time. He drove straight past it, faster, not even looking. But Claire did, and this time, the doorway was empty. She swallowed. It's not inside anymore. Jason didn't respond. He didn't need to, because he already knew. The radio turned on. Static filled the car. Then a voice came through, low, close, not through the speakers, inside the car. "You passed my house." Claire covered her mouth. Jason reached for the radio, but his hand stopped halfway because the voice wasn't coming from the dashboard. It was behind them, in the back seat. "Why didn't you come in?" Neither of them turned around. Neither of them moved. The car kept going, faster, but the feeling didn't leave. That presence, that weight, that certainty. They were no longer alone. They didn't stop until they reached a gas station miles later, just outside Memphis, where lights and people and noise finally made everything feel real again. They didn't talk about it at first, not until they were inside, under bright lights, trying to convince themselves it had been stress or exhaustion or anything else. But Claire finally said it, very quietly. "Jason." He looked at her. "What?" She hesitated, then spoke. "When we passed the house the second time." He waited. The door wasn't open. Jason felt his stomach drop. "What do you mean?" Claire's voice shook. It was closed. She looked toward the parking lot, and something was already outside. People think driving a truck is easy because all you do is sit for hours. What they don't understand is what endless isolation does to your head. You spend enough nights alone on American highways, and eventually the dark starts feeling alive. This happened to me in the summer of 2017, while I was hauling electronics through Arizona on Interstate 10. I almost quit trucking after that night. The run itself was normal at first. I picked up the load outside Phoenix and was heading east, toward New Mexico. Clear skies, warm air, no storms, easy drive. I remember talking to my wife through my headset around midnight while crossing one of the long desert stretches where there's nothing for miles except sand and mountains. Before hanging up, she said something strange. "You sound nervous." I laughed and told her I was just tired. Truth was, I already had this weird feeling in my stomach hours before anything happened, like I was being watched. Truckers know that feeling. Sometimes your instincts pick up things before your eyes do. Around 1:40 a.m., I stopped at a nearly abandoned gas station somewhere east of Tucson. Tiny place, 2 pumps, flickering lights, one old cashier inside watching television. There were only 2 other vehicles parked there, a pickup truck and an old gray semi-truck sitting near the edge of the lot with no lights on. I remember noticing it because the truck looked ancient. Rust all over the trailer, dirty windshield, no company logos, nothing, just sitting there in complete darkness. I fueled up, grabbed coffee, and headed back outside. That's when I noticed someone standing beside my truck. A woman, tall, thin, long dark hair covering part of her face. At first I thought she might have been asking for help. Then I realized something horrifying. I never heard her walk up, not one footstep. She was just suddenly there, standing near the passenger door. She looked filthy, like she'd been wandering through the desert for days. I asked if she needed help. For a few seconds she said nothing. Then she asked quietly, "Can you give me a ride east?" Now listen carefully. Every trucker gets warned about picking up strangers, especially at night. Especially in desert states where human trafficking, robberies, and disappearances happen constantly, so I should have said no immediately, but something about her looked genuinely wrong, not dangerous, broken. Her lips were cracked and bleeding from dryness. Her feet were dirty like she'd been walking barefoot. I asked where she came from. She slowly pointed toward the desert behind the gas station. "There's something out there." The way she said it made my skin crawl. Not emotional, not panicked, just empty. I told her I couldn't take passengers. Then she looked directly into my eyes for the first time. I still see those eyes in nightmares. They looked exhausted beyond human exhaustion, like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. Then she whispered, "If I stay here, it'll find me again." At that exact moment, every light in the gas station flickered once. Even the buzzing sign above the pumps went dark for maybe 2 seconds. When the lights came back, the old gray semi-truck at the edge of the parking lot had its headlights on, facing directly toward us. I suddenly felt this overwhelming urge to leave immediately. The woman turned toward the gray truck slowly, and for the first time, I saw fear on her face, real fear. "Please," she whispered. I made the worst decision of my life. I unlocked the passenger door. The second she climbed inside, the gray truck's headlights shut off again, completely dark. I pulled out of the station immediately, trying to calm myself down. I kept telling myself the old truck probably belonged to another driver sleeping inside, but the woman never stopped staring into the passenger mirror, watching behind us. After about 10 minutes, I finally asked her name. No answer. I looked over. She was trembling slightly. Then she said, "Don't stop the truck no matter what happens." That nervous feeling came back stronger than ever. I asked if someone was following her. She nodded once. Then she said something I'll never forget. "It wears people." I laughed awkwardly because I genuinely didn't understand what she meant. But she didn't laugh. About 20 minutes later, I noticed headlights appear far behind us. One pair, very distant. At first I didn't think much of it. Then the woman started crying quietly. Not loud sobbing, just silent tears rolling down her face while she stared into the mirror. The headlights behind us slowly got closer and closer. Then my CB radio burst into static. A male voice crackled through. "You shouldn't have taken her." I nearly dropped the mic. "Who is this?" Static. Then, "She doesn't belong to you." The woman beside me suddenly whispered, "Don't answer it." I shut the radio off immediately. The headlights behind us kept gaining fast now. Too fast. Within seconds, the vehicle was directly behind my trailer. I checked the mirror and felt my stomach drop. It was the old gray semi-truck from the gas station. Same rusted hood, same dark cab, no running lights except the headlights. And the driver. Jesus Christ. The driver's face looked wrong, like skin stretched too tightly over bone. Its mouth hung slightly open, not blinking, just staring forward. The woman beside me suddenly grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. "If it gets beside us, don't look at it." At that point, I was in full panic mode. I pushed the truck faster even though we were already above the speed limit. The gray truck stayed directly behind us, effortlessly. Then my trailer jerked violently, like something slammed into the back doors. Boom. The entire cab shook. Another hit. Boom. I heard metal bending behind us. The woman started whispering over and over, "It found me. It found me." I tried calling highway patrol, but my phone had no signal. The desert around us was completely empty. No towns, no exits, nothing. Then, the gray truck suddenly pulled into the lane beside me. I remembered her warning immediately. Don't look, but human beings are stupid when they're terrified. I looked anyway. The cab window beside me matched my speed perfectly. And sitting in the driver's seat wasn't a person anymore. I don't fully know how to explain what I saw. It looked like several faces pressed together into one shape. Human skin moving unnaturally across something underneath. Eyes opening and closing in the wrong places, mouths twitching, like multiple people trapped inside one body trying to scream. One of the faces looked like a woman, another looked much older. Then I realized something horrifying. One of the faces looked exactly like the woman sitting beside me. She screamed instantly, "Don't let it see you!" Every light inside my cab exploded off at once. Dashboard dead, radio dead, headlights dead. Complete darkness at 70 miles per hour. I thought we were about to die. Then suddenly the woman beside me grabbed the steering wheel and screamed, "Keep straight!" The headlights flickered back on. The gray truck was gone. No headlights behind us, no vehicle beside us, nothing, just empty desert again. The woman was breathing hard now, staring forward in shock. Then she quietly said, It changes when people look at it too long. I demanded she tell me what was happening. She finally explained between sobs that years earlier she and her boyfriend had broken down somewhere in the Arizona desert after seeing a stranded truck on the roadside. According to her, the driver wasn't human anymore. Her boyfriend disappeared that night. She spent years running from whatever took him, and somehow, it kept finding her. I wish the story ended there. About an hour later, we reached a truck stop near the New Mexico border. Bright lights, other drivers everywhere, safety. I pulled over shaking so badly I could barely breathe. Then I looked at the passenger seat, empty. The woman was gone. Passenger door still locked from inside. Nobody around the truck. I searched the entire lot. Nothing. Completely vanished. I told police everything. They searched the area and checked security cameras from the gas station where I picked her up. That's when things became truly horrifying. The footage showed me standing outside my truck alone, talking to nobody, opening the passenger door for nobody, and driving away alone. But here's the part that still destroys me. As the camera recorded me pulling out of the gas station, the old gray semi-truck slowly turned its headlights on. And according to the police officer reviewing the footage, there was someone sitting in my passenger seat after all, me, smiling directly at the camera. On a freezing November night in 2014, veteran truck driver Raymond Carter was hauling electronics eastbound along Interstate 80 through the mountains of Wyoming. He had been driving for nearly 23 years, and there was very little left on the road that could genuinely rattle him. He had seen overturned rigs, blizzards that swallowed entire highways, and enough accidents to know that the interstate could turn deadly without warning. Still, there was one particular stretch near Elk Mountain that every experienced driver talked about in hushed tones, usually after midnight, usually when the coffee was getting low and the parking lot was almost empty. The locals called it the dead stretch. Raymond had heard the stories for years, drivers reporting phantom headlights in their mirrors, only for them to vanish when they changed lanes, strange radio chatter from voices that didn't identify themselves, a woman in a blue coat walking along the shoulder during storms, even when temperatures dropped well below freezing. Raymond never put much stock in any of it. Truckers, after all, spend long hours alone. The mind can do remarkable things when it's tired. That night, however, conditions were unusually bad. Snow whipped across the highway in violent gusts, and visibility was often reduced to less than 100 feet, the kind of weather that makes every mile feel like 10. Raymond kept both hands firmly on the wheel as his 18-wheeler pushed through the storm. The trailer groaned behind him, buffeted by crosswinds strong enough to shove lighter vehicles right off the road. At 1:47 a.m., his CB radio crackled. Eastbound Schneider near mile marker 255, you got company behind you. Raymond glanced into his side mirrors. Nothing but swirling snow. He picked up the microphone. Say again. I'm not seeing anyone. No answer. He checked the channel. It was the standard trucker frequency. Static hissed softly in the cab. Raymond shrugged it off and continued climbing the grade. A few minutes later, his dashboard clock flickered. The digital numbers went blank for nearly 3 seconds. When they came back, the time read 1:47 a.m. Raymond frowned. He distinctly remembered seeing 1:52 just moments earlier. Electrical issues weren't uncommon, especially in extreme cold. He made a mental note to have it checked later. Then his engine brake engaged on its own. The sudden deceleration jolted him forward. Raymond immediately disabled it, muttering under his breath. The truck resumed speed. A mile later, he saw taillights ahead. A semi-truck, old model, box trailer. No visible company markings. It was moving much slower than traffic should have been, especially given the dangerous conditions. Raymond eased off the throttle and maintained a safe distance. Snow continued hammering the windshield. The truck ahead drifted slightly toward the shoulder, then corrected. Its trailer swayed unnaturally, almost like it was fighting a strong side wind. Raymond reached for the CB. Driver ahead, you okay? Silence. He tried again. Nothing. Then, without warning, the truck's brake lights illuminated. Hard. Raymond slammed his own brakes, ABS rattling violently beneath him. His trailer fishtailed before straightening. For a split second, he thought he was about to die. But the truck ahead was gone. Not over the hill. Not in the ditch. Gone. Raymond's headlights revealed nothing but empty interstate stretching into the storm. His breathing quickened. He checked his mirrors repeatedly, convinced the vehicle had somehow slipped behind him. There was nowhere it could have gone. No exit. No shoulder wide enough. No tracks in the fresh snow. The CB crackled again. A woman's voice, calm and distant. "You shouldn't follow them." Raymond nearly dropped the microphone. "Who is this?" No response, only static. Then another voice broke through, male this time, panicked and distorted. "Black ice, black ice, we're going over." The transmission ended in a burst of feedback so loud, Raymond winced. He pulled into the next truck stop near Laramie just after 3 a.m. His nerves were shot, and he desperately needed coffee. Inside, he told 2 other drivers what had happened. Neither seemed surprised. One older man set down his mug and nodded toward the window. "Happened near mile 255? Raymond slowly nodded. The man leaned back. "You're not the first." According to him, a fatal pileup had occurred there during a blizzard in 1987. A truck lost control on black ice, jackknifed, and triggered a chain reaction involving several semis and passenger vehicles. Multiple people died, including a husband and wife traveling in a blue sedan. Since then, drivers had reported seeing phantom trucks during storms. Some claimed they heard desperate CB transmissions replaying the final moments of the crash. Others reported being warned away from dangerous patches of road by voices no one could identify. Raymond listened, skeptical but unsettled. Then the older driver asked a question that made his stomach drop. "Did you hear the woman?" Raymond stared. "How'd you know that?" The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled a weathered newspaper clipping from his wallet. It showed the aftermath of the 1987 accident. Among the wreckage was a crushed blue sedan. A young woman stood beside it in the photograph, wrapped in a blanket, staring directly at the camera. "She died in the ambulance," the man said quietly. "A lot of drivers think she's the one giving warnings." Raymond laughed nervously, though it came out hollow. The next morning, after the storm had passed, he reviewed his dashcam footage. At exactly 1:47 a.m., the screen filled with static for 4 seconds. When the picture returned, there was no truck ahead of him, but there was something else. Standing on the right shoulder, barely visible through the snow, was a woman in a dark blue coat. She wasn't moving. She wasn't waving. She was simply watching the highway. Raymond froze the frame and zoomed in. Her face was pale, almost featureless, but her eyes were unmistakable. They were fixed directly on his cab. He never drove that stretch at night again. Years later, he still refused loads that took him across Wyoming during winter storms, and whenever younger drivers asked him why, he would simply say the same thing every time. "If your radio tells you that you've got company, check your mirrors." He would pause then, his expression turning serious. "And if you don't see anyone back there, keep driving." The desert outside Barstow has a way of making drivers feel small. During the day, it stretches endlessly beneath a merciless sun. At night, it becomes something else entirely. The darkness out there is absolute, broken only by headlights and the occasional distant glow of another truck moving across the horizon. For drivers traveling east on Interstate 15 toward Las Vegas, there is a stretch near Baker that many seasoned truckers refuse to discuss for long. Some call it the Black Flats. Others simply refer to it as the Long Mirror. The name comes from an old story that has circulated among truckers since the late 1980s. A driver looks into his side mirror and sees another truck following him. The problem is, no matter how many times he checks, the truck never gets closer, never falls behind, and never appears in any other mirror. In September of 2021, Long-haul driver Eric Dalton was hauling consumer electronics from Los Angeles to Salt Lake City. He had driven that route countless times. It was routine, predictable, just another overnight run through the Mojave. At least, that's what he expected. A little after 2 a.m., Eric passed Baker. Traffic thinned until the interstate seemed completely empty. The moon was hidden behind a blanket of clouds, leaving the desert darker than usual. His podcast had just ended when he noticed headlights in his driver's side mirror, a semi, far behind him. Nothing unusual there. He glanced back a minute later. Same distance, same position. Eric frowned. He accelerated slightly. The truck remained exactly where it was. He slowed down. Still there. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The headlights never changed. Eric switched lanes. The lights stayed in the same mirror. That was impossible. He checked the passenger side mirror. Nothing. He looked through the rear window. No headlights. Only darkness. Yet in the driver's side mirror, the truck was still there, perfectly centered. Eric felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. He grabbed the CB. Southbound. Anybody behind me near Baker? Static answered. He tried again. This time a voice replied immediately. Don't look at it too long. Eric froze. Who said that? No answer. He turned the volume up. Only static. He told himself it was a prank. A very bad prank. Still, he couldn't stop checking the mirror. Each time the truck appeared a little clearer. An old cab overmodel, the kind rarely seen anymore. Its chrome grille gleamed unnaturally bright in the darkness. No company logo, no trailer markings, and no visible driver. Eric's mouth went dry. He forced himself to focus on the road ahead. Then his phone rang. No caller ID. Against his better judgment, he answered. All he heard was engine noise, deep, heavy, like a diesel idling inches away. Then a voice whispered, "Pull over." Eric threw the phone onto the passenger seat. At that exact moment, the headlights in his mirror vanished. He exhaled sharply, almost laughing from relief. Then he looked forward. The truck was directly in front of him. No merge, no passing. It was simply there, less than 50 feet ahead. Eric slammed on the brakes. His trailer bucked violently behind him. The old cab over rolled silently down the interstate, its taillights glowing a dull red. He could now see that the rear doors of its trailer were hanging slightly open. Something inside was moving, not shifting cargo, moving. Eric reached for the CB again, but before he could speak, a transmission burst through the speaker. A terrified male voice shouted over roaring wind, "It's in the trailer! It's in the trailer! Don't let it out!" The message ended with a crash of static. Then the truck ahead drifted slowly onto the shoulder, its brake lights illuminated. Eric had to decide in a split second, stop or keep going. Every instinct told him to drive, so he did. He accelerated and passed without looking directly into the cab. But he couldn't help glancing at the trailer. The right rear door had swung fully open. Inside, illuminated by his headlights, stood a tall figure pressed against the darkness. It was too thin. Its arms were too long, and its head nearly touched the ceiling. Eric never saw a face, only two pale eyes reflecting back at him. When he finally reached a truck stop in Prim, he was shaking so badly he could barely climb down from the cab. An older trucker listened carefully as Eric described the encounter. When he finished, the man nodded slowly. "My father saw that truck in 1989. Eric stared. The old driver took a sip of coffee. A livestock hauler disappeared on that route. Truck was found abandoned in the desert 3 days later. What happened to the driver? The old man looked away. They never found enough of him to say. Eric didn't sleep that morning, or the next night. When he reviewed his dashcam footage, the road ahead was completely empty the entire time. No truck, no headlights, nothing. But in the driver's side mirror, visible for nearly 11 straight minutes, the reflection of an old cab over followed him through the dark. And in one frozen frame, just before the call came in, something could be seen standing in the passenger seat of that reflected truck, watching him. Eric still drives long haul, but there is one rule he follows without exception. If you ever see headlights in only one mirror and nowhere else, do not answer your phone. The stretch of Interstate 70 that cuts through the mountains of Colorado is beautiful during the day. Towering peaks, dense pine forests, and winding roads that seem carved directly into the rock. But after midnight, especially in winter, that same highway becomes something else entirely. Truckers have a name for the section west of the Eisenhower Johnson Memorial Tunnel. They call it the Silent Grade. It is a long descent where radio signals often fade, GPS systems occasionally lose track, and more than a few drivers have reported seeing things that simply should not exist. In January of 2019, veteran driver Thomas Walker was hauling frozen food from Denver to Salt Lake City. He had made the run dozens of times before. The weather that night was clear, but temperatures had dropped well below zero, leaving patches of ice hidden beneath the dark pavement. Thomas crossed the Eisenhower Tunnel a little after 2 a.m. Traffic was light. The mountains were silent. Too silent. His CB, normally filled with chatter from westbound drivers, had gone completely dead. No static, no voices, nothing. Thomas adjusted the volume knob twice, but the radio remained silent. Then his dashboard lights flickered, just once. He frowned and glanced at the gauges. Everything looked normal. A mile later, his trailer brake warning flashed briefly, then disappeared. Thomas muttered to himself, blaming the cold. That was when he saw the headlights. A semi-truck was coming up fast behind him, far too fast for that grade. Thomas checked his mirrors again. The truck closed the distance in seconds, its headlights glaring so brightly they nearly blinded him. It moved into the left lane to pass. As it drew even with his cab, Thomas glanced over. The truck was ancient, probably from the late 70s. Rust covered the trailer. There were no company markings, and there was no one in the driver's seat. Thomas stared, certain he had imagined it. Then he saw movement. A figure stood behind the cab, visible through the small sleeper window. Not sitting, standing. Its face was pressed flat against the glass. Thomas instinctively swerved, tires hissing across the icy pavement. The other truck surged ahead and disappeared around a curve. Thomas immediately grabbed the CB. "Westbound. Anyone just passed me near the tunnel?" Only static answered. He accelerated slightly, hoping to catch up. When he rounded the next bend, the road ahead was empty. No taillights, no truck, nothing. His pulse quickened. There were no exits, no pullouts large enough for a semi, no sign that any vehicle had left the highway. Then his CB exploded with sound. A man's voice screamed through the speaker. "Brake failure, can't stop, move!" Thomas nearly jumped out of his seat. The transmission dissolved into metal grinding, horns blaring, and a sound like something massive tearing apart. Then silence returned. Absolute silence. Thomas drove another 10 miles before pulling into a rest area near Silverthorne. His hands were trembling. Inside, 2 other truckers were drinking coffee. When Thomas described the truck, one of them slowly set down his cup. "Old Peterbilt? Rusted trailer? No logos?" Thomas nodded. The driver's face darkened. "You're not the first." According to local drivers, a fully loaded semi had lost its brakes on that same descent in 1978. The driver had radioed frantically for traffic to clear the road. He never made it. The truck slammed into several vehicles before crashing through a guardrail and plunging into the canyon below. The driver and everyone in the cars he struck were killed instantly. Since then, drivers have reported seeing the same rig descending the mountain late at night, always too fast, always silent, and always empty. Thomas tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out thin. The second trucker leaned forward. "Did you see anyone in the sleeper?" Thomas slowly nodded. The man didn't smile. Most people do. Thomas felt the blood drain from his face. "Who is it?" The trucker looked toward the snowy mountains outside. "Nobody knows." The next morning, Thomas reviewed his dashcam. At the exact moment the phantom truck should have appeared, the video distorted with heavy static. When the image cleared, there was no semi beside him, but there was something reflected in his passenger side window, a pale face, sunken eyes, its mouth stretched open in a silent scream. Thomas sold that dash cam the same week. He still drives today, but whenever his route takes him through Colorado, he refuses to cross the Eisenhower Tunnel after dark, because somewhere on that frozen descent, an old truck is still racing downhill, its brakes are still gone, its driver is still missing, and something is still standing in the sleeper, waiting for another truck to pull alongside.